Welcome to the Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in because today we are embarking on a massive, truly monumental journey. We're mapping out an entire 39-week grades 6 and 7 ancient history course. And I want you to think of this not just as some dry syllabus, but as a roadmap for an epic expedition through human history. We're going to see exactly how students go from learning basic map skills all the way to unpacking the complex empires that literally shaped our modern world.
Okay, let's dive into this syllabus overview. Here's our roadmap for the year. We'll start with the essential question, build up our historian's toolkit, explore the first civilizations, travel through the ancient world, examine empires and faiths, and finally, look at the ultimate student outcomes.
Section 1. The essential question. How exactly did ancient societies solve problems of power, belief, and community? This right here is the core mystery, the anchor for the entire curriculum. We really want to guide students to realize that the ancients weren't just characters in a dusty old book. They were real people trying to figure out how to rule fairly, what to believe in, and how to just live together. When students frame history through that lens, they start to see how ancient problems beautifully and, sometimes tragically, mirror our very own modern challenges. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scope of our journey. To tackle that big question, the year is broken down into exactly 39 weeks across 4 distinct units. We spend 10 weeks just building our baseline skills, 9 weeks on early civilizations, 10 weeks on the ancient world, and a final 10 weeks on new empires and faiths. It's a perfectly paced marathon that gives every single era the breathing room it actually deserves.
Moving on to Section 2, the historian's toolkit.
So before we jump into the mummies and the gladiators, students really need their historical survival gear. Over these first 10 weeks, they master geographic tools like maps and graphs, sure, but more importantly, they learn how to evaluate sources. First, we tackle credibility, asking if a primary source, like, say, a diary from an ancient ruler, is actually trustworthy. Then we look at reliability, asking if a secondary source, like a modern textbook, is consistently accurate. This is absolutely crucial for teaching students how to think critically about the information they consume every day. And we aren't just making these skills up. This rigorous 10-week toolkit is officially supported by the NCSS C3 framework, which really pushes inquiry, civics, and economics. It's also backed by Common Core literacy standards for grades 6 through 8. That means every single time a student reads an ancient text or writes an essay, they're doing evidence-based reading and writing. They're building mental muscles that are going to serve them far beyond this one history class.
Section 3. The First Civilizations.
We're spending 9 weeks here, and let me tell you, the technological and cultural innovations we cover are just staggering. In Mesopotamia, humans actually developed the concept of writing. In ancient Egypt, they invent papyrus, completely revolutionizing how we record information. And the ancient Israelites codify scripture that goes on to fundamentally influence European religions for millennia. The sheer scale of early human advancement packed into this unit is just breathtaking.
So the crucial point is that students aren't just memorizing random inventions. They are applying the arrow standards of science, technology, and society. They're analyzing how a development like papyrus entirely changes an economy. They're looking at how geography and human factors dictate production, distribution, and consumption. It's a really deep dive into the domino effect of human ingenuity.
Which brings us to Section 4, the ancient world.
The momentum here is incredible. Building on those early civilizations, we see monumental leaps forward across the globe. The ancient Greeks are refining these incredibly complex writing systems. Early China takes the concept of papyrus and officially creates paper. And early India, they give us one of the greatest mathematical breakthroughs in human history, the concept of zero. I mean, imagine trying to do modern physics, coding, or economics without the number zero. You just can't.
In this unit, our analytical lens shifts to focus heavily on the arrow standards of society, identity, and government. As these civilizations got larger and way more complex, how did they structure their governments? How did a rigid social system in early China or ancient Greece dictate the daily identity of an individual person living there? We're connecting the macro structures of a society directly to the micro experience of the individual.
Next up, Section 5, Empires and Faiths.
The epic scale of this unit really cannot be overstated. We start with the physical, structural engineering of the rise of Rome. They literally invent concrete and the architectural arch to build a massive empire. Then we trace the rise of Christianity and how it fundamentally shaped Western religious beliefs. Concurrently, we study the Islamic civilization, which not only spread a major global religion, but also gave the world the intellectual legacy of algebra.
Now, what's really interesting is how these arrow standards of culture, connections, and conflict tie this entire era together. When these massive empires and faiths bumped into each other, it caused friction for sure. But that conflict, that diplomacy, and those systems of international trade, that is exactly what drove all those cultural and intellectual developments. Ideas like algebra don't spread in a vacuum. They spread through interaction, exchange, and sometimes war.
Finally, Section 6, the ultimate student outcomes.
So you take that toolkit from Unit 1, combine it with the rich historical data from Units 2, 3, and 4, and you end up with these high-level analytical skills. We want a 7th grader to be able to effortlessly compare political systems across different continents. We want them to explain complex religious ideas, trace how an invention like paper diffused across global trade routes, and ultimately evaluate the historical legacy of an empire. This is deep, rigorous, critical thinking.
Which brings us to our final thought today. If ancient societies solved the universal human problems of power, belief, and community using their early tech and trade networks, how are we using our modern tools, like the internet, AI, and global commerce, to solve those exact same problems right now? Are we doing it better, or are we kind of making the same mistakes? Understanding ancient history isn't just about memorizing the past. It is the absolute ultimate toolkit for navigating our future. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible expedition.